What's up, y'all? Your boy just discovered even more reverse chastity manga. Yeah, I'm deep in the trenches now. So if you enjoy this kind of absolutely unhinged, top tier, why does this exist but I can't stop reading it content, go ahead and hit that sub button. Trust me, it only gets worse from here. Let's get into it. The story kicks off with two friends walking home during a beautiful sunset. But instead of talking about grades or sports, one of them drops a total bombshell. He shouts at the top of his lungs, "Man, I want to lose my virginity already." He's not even picky. He's out here telling his friend he'd literally get on his hands and knees and even beg and loose Oni-san for a chance. Talk about down bad. His buddy, our MC, clearly fed up with the thirst, hits him with the ultimate bro line. "If I were a girl, I'd have let you get rid of it." Well, that's one way to shut someone up. But then the vibe shifts. We see our protagonist later that night, lying in bed, looking weirdly serious. He's staring at the ceiling, thinking to himself, "There are still times I can't believe it. I wonder if something like this has ever happened before." And here comes some interesting panels that I don't think need any explanation. Flash forward, and we meet Sato Sora, the MC, the black hair guy from the first page, but he's working a shift at a convenience store. He's realized the truth. The world looks the same, but the social rules have been completely flipped. Welcome to the world of inverted chastity. Sato is just trying to work his shift at the convenience store when a female customer comes up to the counter. Rather than being discreet or embarrassed as one might expect in a traditional setting, she is bold and flirtatious. She asks Sato if he has ever used the product before, and Sato, leaning in, responds with enthusiastic confidence. He gives her a thumbs up and highly recommends them, claiming they are so thin it feels like wearing nothing at all. The girl is delighted by his frankness, laughing and asking if they really feel that good. She even goes as far as to ask him what kind of sexual positions he prefers. This wholesome conversation is interrupted by her male companion, Yusuke. In this reverse society, it is the male who feels a sense of shame and propriety. He is visibly flustered and embarrassed, scolding Yuka for talking about such private things so loudly in public and bothering the clerk. He tries to hurry the transaction along, placing a bottle of toner on the counter and asking Sato to ring it up with the rest. While Yuka continues to be assertive, teasing Yusuke for buying even more skincare products, the young man snaps back at her to be quiet. He complains that maintaining his skin is a lot of work and expresses frustration that a girl like her wouldn't understand the effort involved. Sato watches them leave, reflecting on how strange it feels to see women acting as the aggressors while men are just being gay and are more focused on their appearance and modesty. The scene shifts slightly as Sato is checked on by his manager, a woman with a figure that's, let's just say, hard to miss in this art style. The manager approaches him while holding a box, likely related to store work. Sato, however, remains internally unfazed and reiterates that he is not bothered by things like dirty jokes or suggestive behavior. Despite this, the manager expresses sympathy toward him, saying that as a fellow woman, she feels bad for him, implying that from her perspective, men in this world are on the receiving end of uncomfortable situations. With a flustered expression on her face, she whispers to herself that she understands why people would want to tease Sato. He's just too cute. This catches Sato a little off guard, but he quickly composes himself and gives her a charming smile, saying thanks. He then compliments her new glasses, telling her they look cool and make her seem smart. The manager is instantly overwhelmed by the compliment, blushing deeply and shouting in surprise. In her flustered state, she becomes clumsy and accidentally drops a stack of boxes containing anime figures. She immediately begins apologizing profusely, asking Sato if he was hurt by the fall. Sato remains calm, reassuring her that he is fine. As she kneels to pick up the scattered merchandise, she laments her own clumsiness, thinking to herself that this lack of grace is exactly why she isn't popular with men. Sato looks down at her and, despite having spent time in this world, finds that being in such close proximity to her is still a bit much for him to process. The manager eventually gathers her things and heads off to restock, leaving Sato to his own task. He begins restocking the shelves himself, reflecting on the bizarre consumer habits of this reality. He notes that the favorite foods of high school girls in this world, heavy, fried snacks, and joke candies, are the things men preferred in his previous world. He looks over the inventory, noting that, since the shop is near an all-girls school, the products are heavily geared toward female tastes. This includes dirty-themed items, popular energy drinks with aggressive marketing slogans like "Squeeze him dry," and milk-flavored candies shaped like breasts. Sato picks up a box of condoms featuring a beetle design, pondering how the products themselves haven't changed, only the roles of the people using them. He recalls a time when someone told him they would take responsibility for him, a reversal that left his mind completely blank. His train of thought is suddenly interrupted by a sharp, insistent voice calling for his attention. He looks up from the shelf to see a new customer standing before him, a girl with short, dark hair, wearing a school uniform with her cardigan and shirt partially unbuttoned. She has a stern, almost defiant expression, her presence commanding the space as she waits for him to respond. He asks if she is looking for something specific, but when she makes eye contact with him, her intense demeanor shatters. She begins to blush furiously and starts hyperventilating, her confidence completely evaporating. As she struggles to find her words, she leans in close, whispering a request so softly that Sato can't hear it. When he asks her to repeat herself, he realizes just how physically close she has gotten. She is on the verge of tears, her eyes wide and shimmering with desperation. Sato is momentarily baffled, wondering what is wrong with this person. He finds her behavior oddly familiar, eventually realizing that she acts exactly like a stereotypical shy virgin from his old world. Except, in this reality, that role has been inherited by a high school girl. Before he can process this, the girl suddenly drops to the floor in a formal, desperate bow, her forehead nearly touching the tiles. She introduces herself as Tsubaki Koharu and shouts that she came to find him because of certain rumors she had heard. Sato is immediately wary, wondering what kind of strange rumors could possibly be circulating about him. Assuming she is looking for work, he begins to explain that the store isn't currently hiring for any part-time positions. However, Koharu cuts him off with a plea that has nothing to do with employment. Looking up at him with tear-filled eyes and a face twisted by both shame and resolve, she begs him to let her do it with him. She clarifies her true intent with a shocking final request. She wants Sato to be the one to help her lose her virginity. As Koharu remains on her knees, she continues her desperate plea, promising to do anything if Sato will only agree to take her virginity. Sato looks down at her, struck by the philosophical absurdity of his new reality. He muses that in an ideal world, the value of virginity should be equal for both men and women. However, in his previous world, the social value for a man's virginity was low while a woman's was high. Here, that dynamic has completely flipped, leading to the bizarre situation where a young girl feels a crushing, desperate pressure to get rid of it as quickly as possible. He realizes that while he has encountered this request dozens of times since arriving in this world, he has rarely seen someone as genuinely cornered and frantic as Koharu. Deciding to entertain the situation for now, he tells her that his shift ends at 8 p.m. and that he will wait for her then. Koharu's despair instantly transforms into pure, radiant joy. She thanks him profusely, her face lighting up as she scrambles to her feet. Sato, meanwhile, simply scratches an itchy spot on his neck, once again lamenting that he has ended up in a world that makes absolutely no sense to him. Night falls, and Sato finishes his work for the day. As he exits the convenience store, he hears his coworkers wishing him well. He spots Koharu waiting for him down the street, leaning against a lamppost while staring at her phone. She appears nervous, fidgeting with her hair and adjusting her clothes as she waits. When Sato approaches and calls out to her, she is so lost in her own anxiety that she jumps nearly out of her skin. She lets out a loud scream of surprise, accidentally fumbling her phone and sending it clattering to the pavement. Sato immediately apologizes, realizing he startled her far more than he intended. He kneels down to help her retrieve the phone, while Koharu, still flustered and embarrassed, insists that she is okay, despite her obvious panic. When Sato picks up the fallen phone, he catches a glimpse of the screen and sees that Koharu was researching how to achieve an internal orgasm, complete with charts and expert advice. Koharu immediately lunges for the device, screaming that it isn't what it looks like, though her face is bright red with shame. Sato remains unfazed, simply asking what she meant by the research. Koharu, hiding her face behind the phone, admits that she has heard internal orgasms feel amazing, and she desperately wanted to experience one. Seeing her vulnerability, Sato breaks into a small, confident smirk. He tells her not to worry and to leave it to him, boldly promising that he will make her reach that peak at least 5 times. The sheer audacity of his statement leaves Koharu stunned, but she follows him as they begin to walk together. As they move through the night, Koharu shyly asks where they are going to do the deed. Sato casually informs her that they are going to his place since he lives alone. He explains that he doesn't have the courage to do something like this, where his family might be around. Koharu tries to laugh it off, but Sato notices that she is physically shaking. He watches her closely, wondering if she is terrified of the unknown experience ahead, or if she is simply scared of him. Trying to ease the tension, Sato stops and extends his hand, asking if she would like to hold hands. The simple gesture sends Koharu into another spiral of panic. She stammers in shock, her eyes bulging as she misinterprets the situation. Instead of taking his hand, she frantically digs into her bag and pulls out a 5,000 yen bill, asking if that amount is enough to pay for his services. Sato can only tell her to calm down, realizing that even a simple romantic gesture is being processed through the lens of her desperate, reversed world logic. Sato leans in close to the trembling Koharu, whispering with a playful smirk that if she keeps trying to pay him for every little thing, her wallet will be empty before they even reach his house. The comment sends her into another fit of hyperventilation. She collapses onto her knees, clutching her ears as steam practically rises from her blushing face. Sato, momentarily worried he pushed the tease too far, crouches down to check if she's feeling unwell. As she recovers, Sato can't help but laugh, teasing her about how sensitive her ears seem to be. Koharu shouts his name in a mix of embarrassment and protest, her face a mask of flustered indignation. Seeing she's reached her limit for teasing, Sato softens his expression. He reaches out his hand once more, this time with a gentle, sincere smile, and tells her simply that they should get going. Koharu stares at his open palm, her heart racing, the doki doki of her pulse almost audible, as she finally reaches out and takes his hand. As they walk hand in hand through the quiet streets, Sato notices the texture of her skin. He remarks that her hands are actually quite rough, which causes Koharu to jump and immediately apologize, as if having unrefined hands is a shameful flaw. Sato quickly corrects her, gently explaining that he's actually praising her. To him, rough hands suggest she's been working incredibly hard at something. This small bit of genuine recognition touches Koharu. She looks at him with wide, shimmering eyes before looking away shyly, admitting that she used to work very hard a long time ago. When he asks if she's currently in any school organizations, she tells him she's in the Go Home Club, meaning she has no after-school activities. Sato chuckles, noting that they are Go Home Club buddies then, a light-hearted comment that finally makes Koharu break into a genuine, happy laugh. For a brief moment, the heavy atmosphere of her desperate request fades into the simple, sweet rhythm of two people getting to know each other. As they continue their walk, Sato notices that Koharu's constant trembling has finally ceased. He observes her with a quiet smile, but then poses a serious question, noting that it might be a bit late to ask. Does she have a boyfriend or someone she genuinely likes? He advises her that if she does, she should definitely stop what she's doing now and go home. Koharu reacts with immediate frantic energy, jumping toward him and insisting that she is perfectly okay and has no such ties. Sato takes a moment to look at her more objectively through the lens of this reversed world. He tells her that she seems like the type who would naturally be popular. She's taller than average, has a pretty face, good posture, and a clear, confident voice. He remarks that she should be a massive hit with men. However, Koharu's reaction is one of deep self-deprecation. She looks away, muttering that there is no way someone like her could ever be popular. Sensing a shift in the mood, Sato worries he might have offended her and begins to apologize. This causes Koharu to spiral into a fresh bout of nerves as she frantically apologizes in return, worried that she was the one who made things awkward. Desperate to change the subject and move past the tension, she suddenly grabs Sato and urges him to hurry toward his house. They arrive at a quiet apartment complex. Before they head inside, Sato stops one last time to ask if she is truly okay with this. Koharu looks up at him, her face flushed and her eyes shimmering with a mix of fear, resolve, and anticipation. She gives a small, shaky yes, and the two move into the privacy of the apartment. The atmosphere shifts instantly from the awkward tension of the street to a heavy, intimate heat. In the darkness of the room, the two finally embrace. The transition is abrupt as they lose themselves in a deep, passionate kiss. As the two move to the bed, the intensity of their physical connection deepens, but Koharu's inexperience remains evident. Sato can feel how awkward her kiss is, realizing through her hesitant movements that she has likely never even kissed anyone before. He pulls back slightly, lounging on the mattress with his shirt open, and playfully asks if she plans on ending things with just a kiss. The question causes Koharu to freeze, her face burning with embarrassment as she covers her mouth. She stammers that she simply doesn't know what to do next. Sato laughs gently at her innocence and reassures her, telling her to relax because he will take the lead for her. He begins to unbutton her shirt, noting that she has remarkably large Hakuna Matatas for her frame. When he asks for her cup size, a trembling Koharu reveals they are F cups. All right, folks, I know these kinds of scenes aren't exactly your thing, so don't worry, I'll bravely sacrifice myself and watch them alone. As they continue, Sato finds himself reflecting on their conversation earlier that evening. He recalls her dismissive smile when he told her she could be popular, and he realizes now that the look on her face wasn't just modesty. It was rooted in a deep, self-loathing, pure darkness. In this world of reverse morals, her natural shyness and physical traits have somehow left her feeling worthless or defective by societal standards. Watching her react to his touch, Sato is struck by a sudden sense of purpose. He resolves to use this experience to save her from the darkness that has consumed her self-esteem. As the night progresses into even deeper intimacy, he focuses on her pleasure, hoping to provide the validation and connection she so desperately seeks in this confusing, upside-down world. After their encounter, the atmosphere in the room settles into a quiet, post-intimacy calm. Sato hands Koharu a bottle of water, which she accepts with a shy thank you. As she sits on the bed, her shirt still open, she exhales a long, relieved breath. Sato, maintaining his casual and somewhat playful demeanor, asks her point blank how it feels to have finally lost her virginity. The question catches Koharu completely off guard. She is in the middle of taking a drink and ends up sputtering, accidentally spilling the water all over her lap and the bed. She panics, apologizing profusely while Sato laughs gently, admitting it was his fault for asking such a weird question at that moment. He tells her it's okay, and with a straightforward pragmatism that borders on bold, tells her to open her legs so he can wipe up the spill. Koharu, though embarrassed, complies. As Sato cleans up, Koharu remains visibly flustered, her face a deep shade of red. Sato teases her again, asking if she still hasn't had enough since her face is so beet red. She begs him to stop teasing her, while he just chuckles at her reaction. However, the tone shifts when Sato looks up at her with a more serious expression. He asks her if she is truly okay with having thrown away her virginity on a pervert like him. Koharu's response reveals the deep-seated insecurities she's been carrying. She looks down, her expression somber, and confesses that she has always been made fun of. In this world's distorted social hierarchy, people had told her that a plain girl like her would be a virgin for life. This revelation highlights the darkness Sato sensed earlier, the psychological toll of being considered undesirable in a society that prizes female aggression and confidence. Sato listens to her confession with a soft, knowing smile. He looks at her, vulnerable, yet no longer burdened by the status she was told she'd never escape, and simply remarks that what they told her isn't true anymore. By helping her cross that threshold, he has effectively dismantled the cruel label her peers had forced upon her. As Sato attempts to comfort her, the weight of his words causes Koharu to suddenly burst into tears. Panicked, Sato wonders if he said something insensitive, but Koharu clarifies through her sobs that it was simply very painful to be made fun of day after day. She explains that ever since she became a high schooler, someone has relentlessly teased her about her status, and the stress has been overwhelming. Sato listens, drawing a parallel to virgin shaming among men in his original world. He asks if the person saying these things is a girl, but Koharu reveals that it is actually a guy she goes to school with, someone she absolutely loathes. This news shocks Sato, as he realizes Koharu doesn't even attend the local all-girls school. She travels all the way from a co-ed school in the next town over just to see him. He's momentarily taken aback that she would go to such lengths just to change her situation. Koharu elaborates on her tormentor, a boy who constantly calls her a disappointing eternal virgin, and tells her she'll be alone for life. Sato, applying the logic of his old world, wonders if this boy actually likes her, and is just expressing it through teasing, a trope often referred to as a bratty boy with a fresh attitude. However, he quickly realizes that this behavior has had the opposite effect on Koharu. leaving her genuinely scarred rather than flattered. With a look of newfound peace and a small, determined smile, Koharu declares that she can finally get away from that guy's insults now that she's no longer a virgin. Sato, still a bit skeptical about the boy's motives, asks one last time if there's any chance she actually likes him. The suggestion sends Koharu into a comedic spiral of shock as she waves her arms frantically and shouts that such a thing is absolutely impossible. Koharu continues to vent about her history with her tormentor, explaining that his harassment was so severe back in middle school that she once shut herself in her room for an entire week. Although things quieted down for a time, he eventually began egging her on again once they reached high school. She laments that the more she tells him to stop, the more it backfires, and she concludes that he is simply a worthless person. In her emotional state, she leans in close to Sato. Their faces nearly touching as she continues to complain, but the proximity suddenly makes her self-conscious, and she pulls back with a flustered apology. Sato looks at her with a heavy, serious gaze. He realizes that what she's experiencing isn't just bratty teasing, it is a form of toxic harassment that doesn't know its limits. He tells her firmly that such behavior is definitely not okay. Koharu, touched by his genuine concern, thanks him and admits she finally feels okay now. Sato then offers her a surprising promise. If things with that guy ever get to be too much for her to handle, she should tell him and he will step in to help her out. He smiles, adding with a touch of his usual wit that dealing with a guy is often best left to another guy. Koharu is stunned by his kindness. She watches him, her eyes wide with wonder, and asks why he is doing so much for someone as plain as her. Sato doesn't answer immediately. He privately considers that a little devil type of guy like the one she described might actually get even more aggressive once he finds out she's no longer a virgin, making the situation more serious than he first thought. He looks away, a mysterious smile playing on his lips as he gazes toward the moonlit sky outside. He begins to answer her question, his voice quiet and contemplative. He looks at her directly and explains his motivation with a simple, profound statement. He is helping her because he is a man and she is a girl. In this reverse world, these words carry a weight that only Sato can truly grasp. To Koharu, they likely sound like a strange or archaic sentiment, but to Sato, they represent the fundamental gallantry of his original world. He realizes that the true meaning behind his protective instinct is something only he, as an outsider, will ever fully understand in this society. When Koharu looks at him with a puzzled expression, he simply smiles and brushes it off, telling her it's nothing. Sato decides that he can indulge in this strange, misplaced sentimentality later. For now, he chooses to live in the moment. He falls back onto the bed, stretching his arms behind his head with a confident, mischievous grin. He asks Koharu if she wants to go for one more round. The suggestion sends a final jolt of shock through Koharu, her face flushing crimson as she gulps in surprise. However, her hesitation is short-lived. With a resounding and enthusiastic yes, she lunges back toward him, fully embracing the connection they've found. The story shifts to a local burger joint, where a group of female students is gossiping. One girl leans in close to Koharu, excitedly sharing a rumor she heard, that if you ask the convenience store clerk, he'll actually sleep with you. Koharu, trying to eat her burger in peace, simply dismisses it as impossible. However, the other girl insists it's true, claiming a friend of a friend of a senpai's friend successfully did it. The conversation grows louder as the girl describes the clerk as incredibly sexy, claiming he's like a piece of gum that never loses its flavor. Koharu remains skeptical, especially when the gossip turns to darker rumors about men being lured into traps by groups of women demanding money. Fed up with the wild theories and her friend's pushy nature, Koharu jokingly tells her that for the first time ever, she actually wants to stop being her friend. Her friend doesn't take the hint, even mockingly appointing Koharu as the captain of the pervert discovery squad, since she's too chicken to investigate herself. We then see Koharu walking through her neighborhood, introducing herself through internal monologue. She considers herself a perfectly ordinary girl attending a standard high school with average grades. Despite her self-perceived normalcy, she admits she has one significant problem in her life. That problem is Inoue Shota. He is a boy who has known her since middle school, back when she first moved to the area. He has a habit of appearing by her side before she even notices. As they walk to school, Koharu repeatedly tells him to stop walking with her, but Shota just brushes her off with a smirk, calling her trash and saying he doesn't listen to what trash has to say. Shota is the bratty boy Sato and Koharu discussed earlier. By objective standards, he is actually quite attractive, but his personality is consistently abrasive. He relentlessly mocks Koharu, telling her she's a loser and clicking his tongue at her. When she tries to ignore him, he becomes even more aggressive, demanding that she say something and questioning how someone like her thinks they have the right to ignore him. The dynamic is clearly one of toxic pursuit. Shota uses insults and belittlement as a way to maintain proximity to Koharu, while she is left feeling drained and stressed by his constant presence. Even when they run into other acquaintances, Shota maintains his smug, overbearing attitude, leaving Koharu trapped in a cycle of harassment that she feels she can't escape on her own. The interaction continues as a male student named Mobe joins Shota and Koharu. Mobe warmly greets Shota, then turns his attention to Koharu, asking if she is Shota's girlfriend. Koharu is mortified by the suggestion and immediately denies it with a flustered wave of her hands. Mobe, however, is captivated by her appearance, praising her for being tall and having a cool face and voice. As Mobe innocently continues to strike up a conversation, Shota decides to sabotage the moment. He flashes a predatory, fanged grin and tells Mobe he should probably stay away from Koharu because she is a virgin. Mobe is visibly shocked, as this is considered a significant social stigma in their world. Shota then pulls Mobe away, mockingly asking if he is done hitting on Koharu. As they walk off, Koharu is left standing alone, trembling with rage and humiliation. Shota's words cut deep, especially his laughing remark that virgins are useless when it comes to sex. Before fully leaving her behind, Shota leans back in for one final, cruel whisper. He mocks her for being an eternal virgin with no partner and calls her a loser, even sarcastically apologizing for stealing another chance for her to graduate to experience status. He laughs at her quiet, pained response, telling her that her voice is just too soft. As Shota and Mobe walk toward school, Mobe admits that Koharu was actually totally his type, and that, at this point, he wouldn't even mind her being a virgin. Shota, seemingly irritated by this, quickly pivots to offering Mobe an introduction to a different friend who is exactly his type, but, unlike a pathetic virgin, is actually experienced. Shota maintains his smug, superior expression, satisfied that he has successfully isolated Koharu and reinforced her feelings of worthlessness once again. As Shota and Mobu walk away, Koharu is left in a state of quiet despair. Shota's voice echoes in her mind, mockingly praising himself as a lifesaver, while demanding she worship him. She realizes with a heavy heart that Shota is obsessed with keeping her a virgin, just so he can continue his relentless torment. She recalls the rumors about the sexy, convenience store clerk, and despite her fears that it might be a trap or a scam, her desperation to escape Shota's harassment eventually wins out. She decides to text her friend, demanding the specific details about the legendary convenience store clerk. The scene transitions to Koharu, soaking in a bath, trying to decompress. As she relaxes in the warm water, the reality of what she did begins to sink in. She questions for a moment if it was all just a dream, but the physical sensations still lingering in her body confirm that her encounter with Sato was very real. She touches herself and reflects on the experience, her face flushing as she remembers the intensity of their time together. Her mind drifts back to the apartment, recalling the surprising details of Sato's physique. She muses that despite being a boy, he actually had quite a bit of muscle, and she remembers the rugged texture of his hands. Most shocking to her was the way he took charge. She can hardly believe she was so completely led by a boy. She vividly remembers Sato's voice as he encouraged her to show her face and not be embarrassed, asking if she could feel him inside her. As she sits in the tub, she places a hand on her stomach, thinking about the exact spot where he was inside her. Her heart races at the memory, and she lets out a soft, pained sound of longing, still overwhelmed by the way Sato managed to dismantle her insecurities and the darkness she had been carrying. He didn't just take her virginity, he gave her a sense of validation she had never experienced before. In her memory, Koharu hears Sato's voice again, repeating his promise to protect her, and his lighthearted congratulations on her graduation. These words, spoken from his unique perspective as a man from another world, linger in her mind with a weight she is only just beginning to process. As she splashes her face in the bath, Koharu is suddenly overwhelmed by her own lingering arousal. She scolds herself, calling herself a lustful monster for still being in the mood after having already spent the evening with him twice. She feels a strange mix of embarrassment and self-discovery, realizing her sex drive is far stronger than she ever imagined. Despite the confusion, a sense of profound relief washes over her. She is genuinely glad she found the courage to approach him. As she hides her face in her hands, she realizes that more than anything, she simply wants to talk to Sato again. The next morning, Koharu heads out for school, but her peaceful mood is immediately shattered. Shota is waiting for her outside her gate, greeting her with his usual toxic nickname, Loser Haru, and smugly announcing that he has graced her with his presence again. Unlike previous mornings, Koharu doesn't engage or protest. She simply walks past him in silence, her eyes cold and distant. This shift in her demeanor catches Shota off guard. He stops, his smirk fading into a look of genuine confusion as he watches her back. Sensing a fundamental change in her aura, he suddenly grabs her arm to stop her. His face contorts into a mask of shock and realization as he stares at her. The petty bully is left speechless, instinctively sensing that something definitive has happened to change the girl he spent so long trying to keep under his thumb. The tension between Koharu and Shota peaks when he spots a hickey on her neck and confronts her in shock. Koharu casually dismisses it as a bug bite and walks off, calling him annoying, leaving Shota stunned and in denial. A flashback shows Koharu insisting Satu give her the mark as a symbol of her graduation and rejection of the label Shota forced on her. In the present, she touches it with a quiet, satisfied smile. Meanwhile, Shota spirals, dropping his bag, overwhelmed with rage, jealousy, and obsession. Refusing to accept that someone else has claimed her, he watches her leave and silently vows not to let her go. The day begins at the convenience store as the manager arrives to start her shift, greeting Sato with her usual high energy. Sato greets her in return, though he is sporting a noticeable hickey on his neck, a mark left by Koharu. He tries to play it off as a simple bug bite, but the manager, ever attentive and perhaps a bit too observant, offers him some ointment she bought specifically for him. She giggles, noting that he seems to get bitten by bugs quite frequently. Sato accepts the gift, thinking she is a genuinely kind person. However, he notices the manager's gaze. While she acts kind, she has a predatory, wicked look in her eyes as she stares fixedly at the mark on his neck. He realizes that while she is a nice person, she is also a 25-year-old woman who is clearly stressed and lacking a partner. In a moment of internal altruism, Sato decides that he should help her build up some resistance to attractive men, so she might eventually go out and find a good partner of her own. To achieve this, he pulls down his collar and boldly asks the manager to apply the ointment to his neck for him. The request sends her into an immediate state of flustered shock. Her face turns beet red, and she stammers through her agreement, while her hands tremble uncontrollably as she reaches for his skin. Sato observes her reaction and realizes that despite her age and position, she still has a very long way to go in terms of social composure around men. The shift continues, highlighting the overwhelming reality of being a male clerk in this reversed logic world. Sato is constantly harassed by female customers. One girl asks for his age and social media details. Another claims her phone is broken just to talk to him. And a recruiter for a hostess club even tries to scout him to become their #1 host. By the time the afternoon rush ends, Sato is physically and mentally exhausted, collapsing onto the counter. The manager apologizes for the constant flocking of girls, noting how difficult it must be for him. Seeking a moment of peace and fresh air, Sato heads outside to clean the storefront. He muses on the irony of finding work cleaning satisfying, while he finds cleaning his own home to be a total drag. While he is sweeping up cigarette butts and chasing down stray cans in the parking lot, His peaceful moment is interrupted by a faint, pained groan. He stops and looks toward the shadows behind a large Happiness Mart vending machine, his brow furrowing as he wonders if he just heard a human voice coming from the darkness. Sato finds Koharu huddled and crying behind a vending machine at night. He brings her back to his apartment to calm down, offering her a choice of coffee, tea, or cola. When she chooses cola, he presents her with two classic glass bottles, explaining that despite his messy diet, glass bottled cola is a luxury he refuses to give up. He uses his casual, slightly self-deprecating humor to make her feel at ease, even jokingly asking if she thinks less of his manliness for his dietary choices. As they sit together, Sato clinks his bottle against hers in a friendly toast. He encourages her to treat him like one of her French girls. Her girlfriends, and just relax. Under his gentle guidance, Koharu begins to open up, her tears flowing as she prepares to explain the events that led to her breakdown. The story then shifts to the following morning at Koharu's school. She enters her classroom with a much calmer, more focused expression than she had previously. Her classmates greet her and engage in casual talk about manga, but they eventually notice something missing. They ask her where Shota is, noting how rare it is for the two of them not to walk to school together. Koharu, looking remarkably indifferent, she calmly reaches into her bag and pulls out a book to prepare for class. With a composed and indifferent expression, she simply states that she has no idea where Shota is, and that his business is no longer hers to worry about. Koharu's classmates aren't satisfied with her indifferent attitude. They press her further, asking if she and Shota had a fight, and what could have caused it. One girl expresses intense jealousy, wishing she had a boy to walk to school with, and jokingly suggesting that if Koharu doesn't want him, she would gladly take him off her hands. Koharu remains silent, her expression hardening as she realizes that even among her friends, she is expected to prioritize a boy's feelings over her own peace of mind. The situation escalates dramatically when a group of male students enters the classroom surrounding Shota. Shota is put on a performance of absolute heartbreak, sobbing uncontrollably and wiping away tears with a devastated expression. The other boys look at Koharu with cold, judgmental eyes. One student demands that she make up with Shota immediately, while another tells her to hurry up and apologize. They berate her for being cruel enough to make a guy cry, reminding her that since she is the girl, it is her responsibility to fix the situation, because Shota clearly needs her. Under the crushing weight of this social pressure, Koharu finds herself trapped. She looks around the classroom and sees that everyone, both the boys and the girls, is looking at her with disdain. She realizes there is no escape as long as she is in this class. The common sense of this world dictates that she is the villain for hurting a vulnerable boy. Shota, meanwhile, peeks through his fingers with a sly, manipulative glint in his eyes, reveling in the fact that he has successfully turned the entire room against her. Feeling cornered and defeated, Koharu finally bows her head and offers a pained apology, admitting that it was her fault. Seeing his opening, Shota stops his fake crying and looks up at her with a coy, blushing smile. He tells her that he will only forgive her if she agrees to go out with him. Koharu is left stunned and speechless, while the classroom erupts into cheers. Her classmates celebrate the bold confession, shouting that they are finally together, and remarking that such a courageous move is a boy's special privilege. Koharu stands in the center of the cheering crowd, her autonomy stripped away by a world that views Shota's obsession as a romantic triumph. They tease her for being shy, telling her that since they have been together for so long, she should finally take some responsibility for the relationship. Telling her to stop acting tough. Koharu is paralyzed by internal conflict. She knows that something is deeply wrong. Speaking up would make her the villain. She is certain that if she rejects him now, the entire class will look down on her with cold, judgmental eyes. Because Shota is a boy and she is a girl, the pressure becomes official as class begins. Her friends look on with jealous, supportive smiles, celebrating that she has supposedly landed such a cute boyfriend. Koharu can only let out a hollow, forced laugh, realizing that there is no way she can speak the truth in this atmosphere. At lunchtime, Shota's dominance over her social life is complete. He approaches her desk with his lunch, and her friends immediately move aside, calling the two of them lovey-dovey and giving them space to be alone. Shota begins to feed her, an act of public intimacy that leaves Koharu's classmates in awe of their flirting. Koharu, however, is screaming internally. She reflects on the painful irony of her situation. She gave up her virginity to Sato specifically to escape Shota's harassment, thinking he wouldn't come at her anymore once she graduated. Instead, the opposite has happened. Her attempt at independence has only made Shota more aggressive and possessive. The class has officially branded them a couple, and the weight of that label is suffocating. Koharu feels a physical sense of pain as she watches Shota's slimy, disgusting smirk. He knows exactly what he has done. As he leans in, his eyes full of manipulative triumph, and tells her to just give up and belong to him forever. Koharu lets out a pained, silent scream in her mind, an emphatic no, as she realizes that her nightmare has only just begun. Shota flashes a wicked, triumphant smirk at Koharu. He confidently leverages the immense social pressure he has manufactured, reminding her that their entire class is firmly allied with him. With a dark, obsessive gaze, he makes his possessive intentions clear, asserting that regardless of what she might have done the previous night, she ultimately belongs to him. Koharu mentally processes her hopeless situation, realizing she is the only person who sees Shota's true, manipulative nature. To the rest of their peers, Shota plays the role of a sweet, devoted boy so perfectly that everyone assumes Koharu is enveloped in an aura of happiness. She knows that if she tried to expose his toxic behavior or force a breakup, her classmates would never believe her. Instead, people would immediately cast her as the villain for breaking a pure boy's heart, leaving her completely isolated and ostracized. Seeing no way out, she feels entirely defeated. The scene then transitions to Sato's apartment, where he has been listening to Koharu's harrowing account. Sato is visibly disgusted and remarks on the sheer insanity of Shota's actions. Seeing how broken Koharu is, Sato gently pats her head to comfort her, warmly reassuring her that he is genuinely glad she chose to rely on him after the traumatic events of the previous day. Internally, however, Sato admits a deep sense of guilt, realizing he severely underestimated the situation. He had merely anticipated some petty harassment, not a calculated psychological trap designed to cut off every single one of Koharu's escape routes. Sato acknowledges the grim reality of this reverse society. The stigma against a woman who makes a man cry is so severe that if Koharu were to publicly reject Shota, she would face intense bullying. Shota has successfully weaponized their classmates to cement their status as an official couple. Amid her tears, Koharu interrupts Sato's thoughts to place the blame squarely on herself. She tearfully confesses that it is her fault for not rejecting Shota firmly when they first entered high school. She explains that having an objectively attractive boy constantly hovering by her side made her the target of intense jealousy, which paradoxically allowed a plain girl like her to easily make female friends. Bowing her head in deep shame, she admits that she couldn't bring herself to completely sever ties with him, because she had secretly started to enjoy the envious looks she received from her peers, attention she felt she could never earn on her own merits. Overwhelmed by regret and self-loathing, Koharu passionately cries out that she should have isolated herself, or literally run away from him. She screams in despair that if she had simply mustered the courage to look him in the eye and directly state her hatred, this nightmare would have never happened. Hanging her head in total defeat, she berates herself as the absolute worst kind of person, while Sato listens solemnly to her painful unburdening. Following her tearful breakdown, Sato watches Koharu with a quiet, analytical gaze. He processes her confession about staying close to Shota for the social status it ironically provided. He doesn't judge her. Instead, he acknowledges a stark truth. He admits that if he were still living in his previous world under its normal set of social pressures, he might have ended up behaving exactly the same way. He explains the insidious nature of the trap she fell into. Even if there is no genuine affection, and even if she actually harbors a deep hatred for the person, the social validation that comes from everyone else's jealousy is incredibly intoxicating. For a plain girl who suddenly finds herself attached to a beautiful boy, the constant looks of envy from her peers can act like a drug, slowly eroding her judgment until the toxic situation feels somehow normal. Taking her trembling hand in his, Sato's demeanor shifts from empathetic to intensely determined. He looks her directly in the eyes and delivers a powerful promise. From this moment on, she is free to do whatever she wants. Recognizing that the social conditioning and guilt Shota inflicted on her act as a form of brainwashing, Sato declares his intent to break that spell. With a fierce, unyielding gaze, he vows to overwrite the brainwashing that has been placed on her, starting right now, using his own body and presence to dismantle the hold Shota has over her mind. All right, looks like I must once again make the ultimate sacrifice. I'll bravely watch the next panels alone. For your sake, of course, truly, a hero's burden. If this act of pure, selfless courage moved you even a little, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to reach 100 soon, and honestly, I deserve at least that much emotional compensation. All right, enough suffering. Let's continue. After the intense exercise, Sato and Koharu are lying in bed together, visibly exhausted but relaxed, catching their breath. Sato breaks the quiet with a warm smile, openly praising Koharu and telling her that she was wonderful. This direct compliment catches Koharu completely off guard. Her eyes widen in shock and she becomes incredibly flustered. She struggles to process the praise, asking him if he really thinks so. Sato says it feels strange to say, but he is amazed by her skill, considering it was supposedly only her second time. Koharu humbly credits him for guiding her. The conversation shifts into a sweet, vulnerable exchange of mutual appreciation. Sato admits that if he had been the virgin in this scenario, he probably would have fallen for her right then and there. He expresses genuine happiness that she communicated with him so openly throughout their time together. Koharu, still battling her deep-seated insecurities, hurriedly denies being anything special. She insists that a plain girl like her couldn't afford to be anything less than careful so as not to hurt him, and she returns the praise, complimenting his gentle touch and perfect ability to take the lead. Sato chuckles at her humility, assuring her that her deep consideration and gentleness are exactly the kinds of things that make a man truly happy. Sitting up, he looks at her directly and delivers the core message he has been trying to impart all evening. She needs to start having more confidence in herself. Hearing this clear, unwavering validation, not just of her physical self, but of her care, personality, and worth, finally breaks through her remaining emotional walls. Koharu blushes deeply, and a bright, genuinely happy smile spreads across her face as she thanks him from the bottom of her heart. The heavy, oppressive shadow cast by Shota's manipulation earlier in the day seems to have completely lifted. Sato playfully asks if he should just keep showering her with praise until she finally gets used to hearing it. Koharu admits that while she isn't used to being treated this well and finds it embarrassing, she feels like she is genuinely starting to open up to him. The scene concludes on a comfortable, domestic note as Sato begins to get dressed and casually asks her about her school life, inquiring if she is in any clubs, signaling the start of a healthy, grounded connection between the two of them. Koharu shares that she actually played baseball from elementary school all the way through middle school. She clarifies that it wasn't just a standard school club, but a formal girls' league. Sato is genuinely impressed, realizing that in his world's terms, this is the equivalent of a highly competitive junior boys' league. However, Koharu nervously laughs off the accomplishment, admitting she didn't join a team in high school because she convinced herself she simply wasn't any good. Curious to see this side of her, Sato asks if she has any photos from her playing days. Koharu is hesitant and embarrassed, but pulls up a picture on her phone. As Sato leans in closely to look at the screen, his proximity causes Koharu to blush profusely. Looking at the team photo, Sato hones in on the equipment she is holding and accurately deduces that she played the demanding position of catcher, which surprises her. Despite the fond memory on the screen, Koharu's deep-seated lack of self-esteem quickly resurfaces. She repeats her self-deprecating claim that she was terrible at the sport and caused the whole thing embarrassing. Recognizing the pattern of her negative self-talk, Sato looks at her seriously and challenges her assumption. He asks if anyone on her team ever actually told her she was bad at baseball. Caught completely off guard, Koharu looks down, hesitating before softly admitting that her teammates never actually said anything like that to her. To further dismantle her insecurity, Sato points directly at the photo and asks her to identify who is holding the championship trophy right in the center of the group. Koharu admits that it is her. True to form, she immediately tries to downplay the achievement, frantically making excuses that it wasn't a major tournament and arguing that someone as plain as her didn't deserve the honor of holding it. Before she can spill some more of her self-sabotage, Sato intervenes. He squishes both of her cheeks with his hands. The abrupt, playful gesture physically silences her mid-excuse, leaving her wide-eyed and flustered. With Koharu's cheeks still firmly squished between his hands, Sato forces her to truly look at the reality of the photo. He challenges her distorted self-perception, pointing out that a team would never let a terrible player hold the Central Championship trophy. He urges her to look at the faces of her teammates in the picture, noting that their expressions are filled with genuine praise and respect for her. As Koharu struggles to process this, Sato takes a perceptive leap. He asks her if the person who actually told her she was no good was Shota. The accuracy of his guess strikes Koharu like a physical blow. Sato continues, his expression darkening with quiet anger as he realizes that Shota's insults extended far beyond just her baseball skills. He had likely been insulting her at every possible opportunity. As the truth of Sato's words sinks in, the dam breaks, and Koharu begins to cry, realizing how deeply her reality had been warped. Sato methodically breaks down the psychological abuse she has endured. He explains that it is impossible for anyone to withstand daily mockery without eventually breaking down. By constantly feeding her a stream of insults like a curse, Shota systematically destroyed her confidence, even in the things she excelled at, like baseball. Sato notes that this relentless negativity forced her to become passive, steadily eroding her self-worth from the very moment she met him. He looks at her with intense seriousness and tells her point blank that she was being brainwashed. Shota's ultimate goal was to convince her that she was a fundamentally worthless person. Sato clenches his fist in silent fury, realizing that Koharu's earlier descriptions of Shota weren't exaggerations at all. They were understatements of a severe psychological trap. Sato points out the tragic result of this conditioning. Her constant use of the self-deprecating phrase, "someone like me." He explains that this catchphrase is the direct result of Shota planting a malicious suggestion deep in her mind. Shota engineered her complete loss of self-esteem to create a dynamic where she would believe she could not possibly survive in their society without him by her side. Sato's deconstruction of the abuse finally lays bare the true insidious nature of the boy who has tormented her for years. Sato connects the final pieces of Shota's manipulative puzzle, outlining the grim reality of the boy's tactics. He explains to Koharu that he finally understands exactly why Shota relentlessly used her virginity as a weapon to mock her. It was a calculated, deliberate method designed to completely crush her pride as a woman. Sato notes that Shota's ultimate goal was to push her self-esteem so far past its breaking point that she would instinctively cling to her abuser, having been brainwashed into believing he was the only person she had left in the world. Seeing Koharu overwhelmed from this heavy revelation, Sato softens his tone. He acknowledges how confusing and jarring it must be to have her entire social reality deconstructed so suddenly, especially by a man she only met 2 days prior. He offers a gentle apology, humbly backing down a bit by adding that his analysis is ultimately just his own outside speculation. However, Koharu stops his apology. Gripping the bed sheets tightly and bowing her head with a shadowed but resolute expression, she tells Sato that she actively wants to believe in his words and trust him. Surprised by her sudden shift in demeanor, Sato asks her to confirm if she is truly sure about this. She gives him a firm, undeniable affirmation. Sitting up, Koharu announces that her mind is completely made up. Watching her gather her resolve, Sato smiles softly to himself, reflecting internally on the poetic irony of the situation. He realizes that by a twist of fate, it was the very last surviving shred of her pride that originally drove her to seek his help at the convenience store. Because she took that leap, the virginity that Shota had so ruthlessly used to chain her down is now permanently a thing of the past. We get a close-up view of Koharu with tears still welling in her eyes, but a fierce, unwavering determination shining through them. She makes a resolute declaration. She boldly declares that she is done running away. The story skips forward to the next morning. Koharu exits her house dressed in her school uniform, ready to face the day. Her demeanor is calm and focused, completely lacking the nervous, defensive tension she had carried in previous days. However, her peace is immediately interrupted. Shota is waiting for her right outside her gate, casually leaning against the wall and drinking a juice box. He greets her with a cheerful, entirely fake, "Good morning," fully expecting her to immediately fall back into their toxic routine. Koharu, however, doesn't react as he anticipates. She looks at him with a cool, unbothered expression, a noticeable shift from her usual anxious submission. She simply walks right past him without uttering a single word. Shota's cheerful facade shatters instantly. He drops his juice box, his face contorting in shock and rising anger at being ignored. He quickly catches up to her, yelling at her not to dare ignore him and demanding to know what she thinks she's doing. She slows down and turns her upper body slightly, glancing back over her shoulder. The motion is subtle but deliberate, and the panel emphasizes her presence, her calm eyes, composed face, and soft expression. There's no aggression in her demeanor. Instead, she appears gentle, curious, and slightly amused. As the perspective moves closer to her face, her expression becomes clearer. A faint blush colors her cheeks, and a soft smile begins to form. This look completely flusters Shota. His earlier anger fades into confusion, but then his arrogant side takes over, and he assumes she's just being shy because she's dating someone as cute as him. He lets out a nervous chuckle, trying to play it off as her having a cute side, but his bruised ego is obvious when he menacingly mutters to himself that he'll have to punish her later for making him feel unpleasant. Before Shota can say anything, he's interrupted by a cheerful voice. Another boy from their school rides up on a bicycle, greeting Koharu warmly. Koharu remarks that seeing him on a bike is a rare sight, and the boy explains that he's on day duty and overslept, which is why he's in a hurry. Koharu's entire demeanor instantly softens. She smiles genuinely at him, engaging in friendly, natural banter while completely ignoring Shota's presence. As the boy rides off, Shota's jealousy and insecurity flare up violently. He immediately begins to berate Koharu, asking her with a nasty sneer if she is so desperate that she has to try and make male friends in other classes. However, Koharu doesn't shrink away from his insult. Instead, she looks at him with an expression of complete emptiness. There is no fear, no guilt, and absolutely no affection. She simply stares at him as if he is nothing. And I have no freaking idea what this image is supposed to mean. Is she jumping, running away, or did the artist just feel horny and give her this weird-ass pose? Anyway, let's continue. The tense morning encounter reaches a breaking point as Shota completely loses his temper. His face contorts into an ugly mask of rage, and he screams at Koharu, demanding she stop her behavior while fiercely belittling her as a pathetic weakling. Instead of cowering or apologizing as she would have in the past, Koharu simply turns her back and walks away. Shota yells after her, threatening that she will deeply regret crossing him, but his words bounce right off her. As she continues her walk to school, Koharu reflects on Sato's guidance. He had told her that completely ignoring Shota would be the most effective strategy, and seeing it work so perfectly brings a genuine smile to her face. She marvels at Sato's insight, realizing she had never once seen Shota lose his carefully crafted composure until today. Empowered by this small but significant victory, she steels herself for whatever comes next. Upon arriving at school and sliding open the door to her classroom, Koharu immediately senses the heavy, hostile atmosphere. The usual morning chatter drops, and she is met with the intense, glaring eyes of several male students, Shota's primary friend group. Koharu doesn't flinch. She mentally notes that the gossip about her ignoring Shota has already spread through the class, but she remains entirely unbothered, having fully anticipated this exact scenario. Her female friends quickly approach her, their faces etched with concern. They ask if she is all right, noting that they had never seen Shota look so visibly furious before. Koharu offers them a relaxed, reassuring smile, effortlessly brushing off the drama. However, the momentary calm is interrupted when the group of hostile boys aggressively closes in on her, physically boxing her in. Koharu's expression shifts to a cool, calculating gaze. She knows exactly what play they are about to make. The boys immediately launch into their attack. They scold her for being unimaginably cruel, reporting that Shota has been crying uncontrollably simply because she cut off contact with him. They aggressively question how she could possibly treat her own boyfriend so heartlessly. Unintimidated by their numbers or the heavy societal pressure they are trying to crush her with, Koharu looks directly at them with clear, unwavering eyes. She calmly dismantles their entire self-righteous attack with a single, undeniable truth. She states plainly that she is not his girlfriend. She points out the glaring hole in the narrative Shota has spun for the class, reminding them that during his grand, tearful spectacle the previous day, she never actually gave him an answer or accepted his confession. The boys in the classroom are completely stunned into silence by Koharu pointing out the flaw in their logic. Taking advantage of the sudden quiet, Koharu turns her attention directly to Shota. With a formal, polite bow of her head, she apologizes for keeping him waiting for an answer since yesterday. Then, in front of everyone, she delivers a clear, unequivocal rejection, stating firmly that she will not go out with him. This blatant rejection shatters the boys' stunned silence, instantly replacing it with vitriolic outrage. They lash out at her, hurling insults and questioning her very nature as a woman for being so cold-hearted. They angrily point out how completely different she is acting compared to just the day before, as they barrage her with verbal abuse. Outwardly, Koharu carries herself with a calm, almost indifferent expression, as if their accusations don't matter anymore. She tells herself that the person she is now no longer cares about their judgment. But beneath that composed exterior, her hands betray her. She fidgets with her fingers, a small, restless motion that reveals what she refuses to show. Deep down, she admits that even though she had prepared herself for this moment, being targeted by the entire class still stings more than she expected. And yet, she immediately denies it to herself, insisting that it doesn't really hurt, trying to maintain the image of strength she's chosen to uphold. Pushing through that lingering vulnerability, Koharu locks eyes with Shota. She delivers her final, devastating boundary, explicitly declaring her absolute hatred for him. Fulfilling the promise she made to Sato and to herself, she asserts that she is finished running away and fiercely demands that Shota never come near her again. Stripped of his control and his public narrative, Shota's carefully crafted victim persona completely dissolves, leaving his face contorted in raw, unhinged shock and fury. The intense standoff is broken by the ringing of the school bell, signaling the start of the first period. The boys reluctantly back away from her desk, muttering in disgust about her supposed insanity and labeling her an enemy to all men. As they disperse to their seats, Koharu slumps slightly, letting out a heavy, exhausted breath. In stark contrast, Shota sits in the background, furiously biting his thumbnail, consumed by anxious, festering rage over his sudden loss of power. A tense, but surprisingly quiet atmosphere settles over the classroom for the remainder of the morning. However, this hard-won peace is abruptly shattered the moment the fourth period concludes. Before Koharu can react, the same group of hostile boys aggressively corners her at her desk once more. With Shota standing menacingly behind his human shield of friends, the ringleader demands that she follow them immediately, declaring their intent to force a confrontation and make her properly reconcile with Shota. Koharu firmly rejects any possibility of reconciling with Shota. The situation quickly escalates when three other male classmates surround Koharu at her desk. They aggressively pressure her to consider Shota's feelings and demand that she act responsibly as a woman. Visibly overwhelmed and cornered by the group, Koharu shrinks back and offers a meek apology. Just as the pressure peaks, two other female students step in to defend Koharu. They tell the group to stop, pointing out how uncomfortable they are making her and accusing them of unfairly casting her as the villain. One of the defenders realizes that Koharu had been enduring the boy's attention despite hating it, simply because she hadn't explicitly rejected him until now. Koharu reacts with wide-eyed surprise at their intervention. Meanwhile, a frustrated Shota clicks his tongue while the other girls in the background begin to whisper about how overbearing the situation has become, remarking that it must be nice to be a guy since they can do whatever they want just by crying. Seeing her classmates rally behind her prompts Koharu to recall a past conversation with Sato. In her memory, Sato calmly advises her to control her emotions and maintain her composure. He assures her that by staying calm, the people around her will eventually see that Shota is the one behaving inappropriately. A highly flustered Koharu pushes back against this idea, expressing deep skepticism that anyone would actually take her side as an ally. Sato playfully challenges her lack of faith in her peers. To prove his point, Sato directs Koharu's attention to a photograph of her surrounded by a group of smiling female peers. He explains that her classmates wouldn't participate in such a lively photo if they didn't genuinely like her, indicating she is much more well-liked by the girls than she believes. Looking at her with a gentle, reassuring expression, Sato tells her that regardless of the suggestions forced upon her, her core identity remains completely unchanged. Empowered by Sato's remembered advice and the real-time support from her classmates, Koharu abruptly stands up, slamming her hands on her desk and shocking Shota. She confidently addresses the rest of the classroom, apologizing for the public disturbance. Establishing her boundaries, she firmly announces that she and Shota will discuss their issues privately from now on, classifying it as a personal matter between the two of them. Koharu confronts a bewildered Shota, calling him by name. Koharu maintains her authoritative presence. She looks down at Shota with an unyielding expression and dictates the terms of their private talk, instructing him to meet her at her house after school. Shota looks surprised by the direct invitation, but asks for confirmation regarding the location. The atmosphere remains tense as another worried male classmate rushes to Shota's side, expressing concern for his safety and volunteering to accompany him. Without another word, Koharu turns and exits the classroom. The panels focus on her purposeful stride out the door, while narrative text establishes that their final confrontation is set for 5 o'clock that evening. The perspective then shifts to Shota, revealing true reaction to the situation. He dismisses his friend's offer for an escort, stating he will go alone. His face contorts into a flushed, unsettling smile as he licks his lips, openly admitting his eager anticipation for the private meeting. Concurrently, the page shows Koharu walking away with a determined yet slightly apprehensive look on her face. As she heads toward the inevitable clash, she mentally invokes Sato's name, gathering her resolve and drawing strength from his previous advice. Koharu walks home, her chest tight with nervous anticipation. Upon arriving outside her 2-story house, she hesitates for a moment, clutching her sleeve to ground herself and mentally leaning on the reassurance of a protective charm. Shortly after she settles inside, the doorbell rings. She opens the door to find Shota standing there, his face flushed and sporting a wide, enthusiastic grin as he cheerfully announces his arrival. The two enter the home, stepping into a tidy, modern living room and kitchen area. Shota immediately notices the quiet atmosphere and asks about the whereabouts of Koharu's mom. Koharu calmly informs him that her mom is at work and that they are entirely alone in the house. Hearing this confirmation, Dude keeps his creepy-ass smile on. Shota makes himself at home, taking a seat at the dining room table while casually scrolling through his phone. He adopts an annoyed and arrogant attitude, complaining that Koharu has wasted his energy. He dismissively suggests that her assertive behavior in the classroom was simply because she was embarrassed to be put on the spot in front of everyone. Koharu stands quietly nearby, her eyes closed as she absorbs his condescending tone. Finally, she opens her eyes, addresses him formally, and begins with an apology. Koharu looks down at Shota with a piercing, emotionally detached gaze. She calmly acknowledges that her actions caused a lot of commotion for him earlier that day. Her sudden, icy demeanor deeply unnerves Shota. He flinches, visibly shaken, and defensively yells at her to stop looking at him with such cold eyes. Ignoring his outburst, Koharu continues, apologizing for failing to be direct sooner, and for inadvertently leading him on during all the time they have known each other. Standing firm, Koharu delivers her final verdict. She explicitly tells Shota that she hates him and declares her intention to sever all ties between them starting immediately. Shota is momentarily paralyzed by the blunt and absolute rejection, staring up at her in stunned silence. However, his shock rapidly morphs into explosive fury. Shota violently lashes out, furiously screaming at her and vehemently refusing to accept the end of their relationship. The confrontation escalates as Shota completely loses his temper, violently yelling at Koharu and aggressively asserting his perceived ownership over her. He leans in menacingly, commanding her to remain silent while degrading her with harsh insults and labeling her a pathetic failure. Shota unleashes a rapid-fire torrent of insults intended to completely shatter Koharu's self-esteem. He insists that she is entirely dependent on his attention and that no one else would ever care for her. He systematically attacks her insecurities, claiming her participation in baseball was merely an act of pity from others, while also heavily criticizing her physical appearance, her fashion sense, and her overall personality. Rather than breaking down under the intense verbal abuse, Koharu remains entirely composed. She reflects internally that her former, weaker self would have been easily reduced to tears by this harsh treatment. Instead, she draws strength from an intimate memory of her with Sato, who had previously encouraged her to build self-confidence and warmly complimented her attractiveness. Grounded by this supportive memory, Koharu simply chuckles to herself, entirely unfazed by Shota's screaming. Looking at Shota with cold detachment, Koharu bluntly informs him that his opinions hold no weight with her anymore. When Shota indignantly protests her defiance, she calmly dismisses his behavior as childish and openly regrets allowing herself to be brainwashed by him for so long. She definitively ends their association, apologizing briefly before firmly requesting that he never approach her again. In response, Shota physically lashes out, violently stomping the ground in a petulant, childlike rage. Shota's furious tantrum abruptly stops, and his expression drops into a sinister, shadowed grin. He erupts into unhinged laughter, casually brushing off her rejection with a disturbing flippancy. As Koharu turns away, Shota mutters that if she refuses to submit to him willingly, he will take alternative measures. He then brandishes an active, sparking stun gun. With a crazed, predatory expression, he firmly declares his intention to use force to make her his. The situation takes a terrifying turn as Shota brandishes the active stun gun. Koharu recoils in genuine fear, letting out a cry as Shota advances. Completely consumed by his violent obsession, Shota erupts into maniacal laughter. He repeatedly screams Koharu's name in a crazed, frenzied manner, lunging forward with the electrical weapon intending to strike her down. Before Shota can make contact, Sato abruptly intervenes. Maintaining an entirely calm and unfazed demeanor, Sato effortlessly catches Shota's wrist, halting the dangerous attack mid-strike. As Shota stares in confused shock at the sudden intrusion, Sato casually reflects on the bizarre nature of the situation, commenting dryly that there is no demand for male yanderes. Ignoring Shota's panicked demands for his identity, Sato smoothly pries the stun gun from the boy's grip, officially confiscating it. Shota flails and demands the weapon back, but Sato quickly subdues his thrashing with a sharp, punishing flick to the forehead. As Shota recoils and cries out in pain, Sato leans in and sternly commands him to calm down. With the immediate threat neutralized, Sato directs Shota's attention to a small device resting on a nearby shelf. He reveals that a hidden camera has been recording the entire encounter, advising the shocked teenager that it would be in his best interest to stop struggling. Standing next to Koharu, Sato sighs in disappointment. He admits he had foolishly held out hope that Shota might be capable of having a serious, mature conversation regarding the end of their relationship. Shota stubbornly continues to demand Sato's identity. Sato completely dismisses the question and instead steps closer to Koharu and places a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Sato directly confronts Shota about his supposed feelings for Koharu. Driven further into his delusion, an unhinged Shota violently clutches his face and defensively screams that Koharu belongs to him. Then Sato critically questions Shota's true motives, pointing out that if the boy genuinely liked Koharu, he should have simply been honest from the beginning. Sato coldly reprimands Shota for his twisted mindset, prompting the teenager to defensively scream and demand to know what right Sato has to judge him. Maintaining a mocking, condescending smile, Sato bluntly informs the boy that his toxic behavior will guarantee he remains a virgin for the rest of his life. As Sato breaks down the boy's facade, Koharu has a quiet realization that Shota's relentless harassment was actually a severely warped manifestation of genuine affection. Sato's harsh, uncompromising words clearly strike a nerve, leaving Shota staring in wide-eyed, horrified shock. As Shota breaks down crying, Koharu reflects on their past, admitting internally that she was initially thrilled to have a cute boy living next door. She thinks to herself that if he had only been honest about his feelings from the start, he might have been the one standing beside her right now. Having reached her emotional limit and ready to move on, Koharu turns to Sato and firmly says, "Sato-san, that's enough." Respecting her decision to end the confrontation, Sato simply replies, "Oh, okay." Shota's eyes widen in absolute fury as he watches the scene unfold. Koharu steps close to Sato, tightly clinging to his arm and pressing herself against him. Sato glares down at the teenager, firmly ordering him to step away from her. Emboldened by Sato's presence, Koharu resolutely declares that she is ending their toxic dynamic right then and there. Shota recoils in desperation, begging her to stop calling him by his formal surname and attempting to salvage their connection. Koharu looks down at him with an icy, lifeless glare, her expression showing nothing but absolute disgust. Unable to bear the reality of her cold, rejecting look, Shota lashes out in denial, screaming at her to stop making that face and frantically forbidding her from saying another word. Koharu delivers one final apology. Leaning affectionately against Sato, Koharu explicitly confirms to Shota that she's already subscribed to my channel, leaving Shota completely broken by this final revelation, his face totally blank and his eyes wide in a state of absolute, silent devastation as he tries to process the fact that he didn't even hit the subscribe button first.